Hi, Beauty Beans. Welcome back to the Creating Conversations podcast. At the beginning of all of my videos, I always want you to sit and ask yourself, how are we doing today? Truly, 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 how are we doing today? Obviously, new setup, very different, but we're doing it, to say the least. So without further ado, something that I want to talk about today is a deficit mindset. And something that I was talking, jeez Louise. It was something that I was talking to my therapist about. RIP, he didn't die, but I miss him because he was done with his training. So I'm not seeing him currently, but I miss him. And fun fact, I had no idea for the first 6 months that I was seeing him that he was gay. And it was like a running joke. And I was like, how can a straight man be this emotionally intelligent? But well, it turned out he was gay. So funny story. But deficit mindset. We were talking about this because it was something that I was struggling with. And I feel like for me, where this comes from, it was really, really layered because I come from a family of addicts. Another fun fact, my parents met in AA. Kind of scary, but anyway. And I realized that the deficit mindset was actually something that I've seen a lot in my life. I've had people in my family who, are a decade sober, but kind of still in a deficit mindset. And the reason why I kind of talk about addiction here a little bit is because I think to define what a deficit mindset is, I think it prioritizes what's missing, what's lacking, and kind of like connecting that to addiction is like this vice. It's like, well, I need this dopamine, this drug, this thing to validate me, secure me, whatever. And I even think sometimes the deficit mindset, like being really centered in what's missing or what's lacking, you almost feel like, oh, I'm doing something right because I'm like identifying what's missing or what's lacking. And I don't really think that's true at all. I think that when we're focused on what's missing or what's lacking, we're not present. And I also think too, like the deficit mindset is very like rooted in shame, and it's like rooted in blame, and it's like we're finding a way to blame ourselves for like where we're at. And I think when we look at like capitalism, when we look at the internet, when we look at social media, like hustle culture, like all those things I think are rooted in this like concept of like comparison. Or I think they also really facilitate this mindset of like, you should be doing this. Like, oh, if I should have done this to end up here, or I should have done my life this way, and then I would have had this sort of outcome. And even the way that we view social media today, it's like this, perspective that like, people think, oh, if it's not on social media, it didn't really happen. And I don't believe that, but I know people that believe that. And I think, again, like, that's like a deficit mindset in a way. We're not really being present. And so if I like tie in some like restorative, transformative kind of ideology here to say, which I know I do a lot, and I really need to make videos defining what those are, but something that I think comes up a lot is this idea that like curiosity and judgment can't coexist. If you're judging yourself all the time, you're not meeting yourself with curiosity, and again, like if you ask questions, like you're in the present, but like if you're expressing judgment, that's coming from elsewhere. So I think that's something to really focus on too when I'm like talking about these concepts, because again, like that judgment is rooted in shame and blame and like not in the present. And I think in this video, what I want to talk about is like, how do you put yourself in the present? Like, how do you push through these, you know, feelings of lacking or what's missing, or almost, I want to say, sorrow too, in a way. And another part of kind of like transformative restorative work that I think is really important that I'm going to talk about is celebrate your little victories. Like, it is so important in this world today to learn how to celebrate yourself. I think we're all chasing this like huge outcome, this huge accomplishment, this like something that's like, oh, I've done all of this, and you know, I've accomplished so much and blah 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 blah. But it's like, if you don't learn how to celebrate your little victories, then you're never really going to appreciate the big things. You're never going to really appreciate how far you've come if you can't like say to yourself like, wow, I accomplished like making my bed today. I don't know, you know, like, but it's, I think finding like celebration in the mundane, I think, is really 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 important, when especially in life in general, but especially trying to understand a deficit mindset. You know, I was reading this Substack article, which was really cool. It was like talking about, you are the person that's going to take yourself the most serious. Like how seriously you take yourself is going to kind of pour over how your surroundings are going to take you seriously. And one of the pieces sort of that article, which I loved, which is what I'm talking about, is that like, you know, how loud you celebrate yourself is like going to set the tone for your environment around you to celebrate yourself. And I thought this was really, really powerful, because again, like, I'm sort of repeating myself, like that's exactly a big pillar, I think, in like restorative work to begin with, to like appreciate your little victories. And I think that's also true, right? Like, you know, if you don't make time for it, it's like not going to happen. And you can say that in life with anything, but especially celebrating yourself, especially giving yourself kudos. And I think that's a really big way that you can kind of like institute change within yourself, of like learning how to celebrate yourself. What does that look like? Like, you know, you could journal at the end of the day, like gratitude. I was like grateful for, you know, what did you do today that made you feel good, or that you're grateful for, or like something today that you can even say, oh, I accomplished that, you know? Because I think the deficit mindset takes you out of being present and takes you out of not, you know, letting you see like what's right in front of you. Because I promise you, like, if you gave yourself just a second to do that, you would be like, holy shit, like, wow, I actually have done a lot. Crazy. And also, like, in all these things I've talked about, like the hustle culture, like the competitiveness on the internet, and like capitalism, it's like rooted in like all of these ways to not be centered in yourself. Like, we are bred in existence to find some sort of vice, right? And, you know, whether that's hardcore drugs or fucking dopamine, you know, whatever, like, it's, you know, gonna happen to you in the way that it happens to you, whether you're predisposed to something or not. But I just think it's really important to celebrate yourself, because like the article was saying, like, you're the one that's going to be in charge of that, and the only person that's going to make sure it happens. So, yeah, guys, that's like deficit mindset. Crazy. Can't believe it. But, well, I can believe it. What am I saying? But yeah, until next time.